Somewhere deep in the jungle, there's a city of 500,000 people that no road has ever reached. You don't drive there, you fly in or follow the river for days. It's been that way for generations. In another corner of the world, an entire town can shut down without warning. People collapse mid-conversation, mid-step, mid-bite, and don't wake up for days. Scientists have spent years studying it, and still, no one can fully explain why. Far to the north, a small Arctic community disappears into darkness for 4 straight months every year. No sunrise, no daylight, and the people living there didn't choose it, they were relocated and left to adapt. And then there's a city where more than 300,000 people live on ground that's literally giving way beneath them. Streets are warping, buildings are cracking, the frozen earth that once held everything in place is thawing, slowly erasing the foundation of an entire city. These aren't places humans were ever meant to live. Extreme heat, crushing cold, isolation so deep it cuts you off from the rest of the world. Environments filled with hazards in the air, the land, and the water. Every one of these places sends the same message: you don't belong here. And every time, humans choose to stay anyway. This is our countdown of 10 of the most extreme places on Earth, where survival isn't guaranteed, and nature sets the rules. Before we dive in, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Let's see how far this video travels. Number 10, Motuo County, Tibet Autonomous Region, China. In the remote southeastern edge of Tibet, right up against the border with India, there is a county that, until as recently as 2013, had no road linking it to the rest of China. Not a rough road, not a dirt road, no road at all. Motuo County lies deep within the Yarlung Tsangpo Grand Canyon, the deepest canyon on Earth, dropping more than 1,500 meters deeper than the Grand Canyon itself. The landscape here is so unforgiving that for decades, every attempt to build a road failed. Landslides swallowed construction crews, avalanches erased months of work overnight. Towering peaks rising above 7,000 meters form a natural barrier of rock, ice, and dense jungle that pushed back against even the most determined engineering efforts. Before the road was finally completed, reaching Motuo meant days of trekking through thick subtropical forest, crossing rivers without bridges, and climbing high mountain passes above 4,000 meters, where altitude sickness was always a risk. The trails were filled with hazards, venomous snakes, swarms of leeches clinging to exposed skin, and disease-carrying ticks, with no medical help anywhere nearby. Between 1965 and 2009, at least 5 major road building attempts failed. Floods wiped out bridges, tunnels collapsed, entire sections of roadway slid down mountainsides during monsoon season. When the connection was finally completed in 2013, it required carving a tunnel through solid mountain rock and cost over 1 billion yuan. Even today, the road is unreliable, often shut down for weeks at a time due to landslides and avalanches. Around 12,000 people live in Motuo, including the Memba and Loba ethnic groups, who have called this valley home for centuries, long before modern infrastructure ever reached the region. They survive by growing rice, corn, and bananas in the warm, humid climate of the canyon floor, a microclimate so different from the frozen Tibetan plateau above that it feels like an entirely separate world. For generations, these communities lived in one of the most isolated yet biodiverse regions on Earth, completely cut off from the outside world. Surrounded by mountains that resisted development for over half a century, Motuo existed beyond the reach of modern civilization. They didn't need the road needed them, because the idea of a place that could not be reached was something the outside world refused to accept. Number 9, Saba, Caribbean, Netherlands. In the northeastern Caribbean, about 50 kilometers south of Saint Martin, there's an island so steep and compact that it doesn't have a single beach. Not a small stretch of sand, none at all. Saba is essentially the exposed peak of an ancient volcano, rising sharply out of the ocean with sheer cliffs dropping straight into the sea on every side. The island covers just 13 square kilometers, about 5 square miles, and is home to roughly 2,000 people. It also has one of the most extreme airports on Earth. Wanchoi Irausquin Airport features the shortest commercial runway in the world, measuring only 400 meters, or about 1,300 feet. The runway is bordered by cliffs at both ends, leaving zero margin for error. Only specially trained pilots are allowed to land here, and only small propeller aircraft can even attempt it. But the runway isn't the biggest challenge. Saba sits directly in the path of Caribbean hurricanes, one of the most storm-prone regions in the world. Over the years, powerful storms have repeatedly battered the island. In 2017, Hurricane Irma, a Category 5 storm with winds over 295 kilometers per hour, caused widespread destruction. Buildings were torn apart, the harbor was severely damaged, power and water systems were knocked out for weeks. According to the Royal Netherlands Meteorological Institute, Saba's location and elevation make it one of the most hurricane-exposed inhabited islands in the Caribbean. And when a storm approaches, there's nowhere to hide. The island lacks a natural harbor capable of protecting boats, the airport shuts down, and the surrounding ocean becomes impossible to navigate. That leaves 2,000 people stranded on a rugged piece of volcanic rock, waiting for the storm to pass. Even building basic infrastructure here was once considered impossible. In the 1930s, Dutch engineers concluded that constructing a road on terrain this steep couldn't be done. But one local resident, Josephus Lambert Hassel, refused to accept that. He studied civil engineering through correspondence courses, designed the road himself, and led its construction using local labor. It took 2 decades to complete. Today, that road winds its way from the shoreline to the island's highest point, carved into the mountainside with tight, dramatic switchbacks. There are no traffic lights, no fast food chains, and no major hotel brands. Saba has just one gas station, one medical center, and one high school. People stay here not in spite of the isolation, but because of it. The very conditions that make life difficult are what make the island feel like home. 2,000 people living on 5 square miles of steep volcanic rock, constantly exposed to powerful storms, relying on the shortest runway in the world, and connected by a road that experts once said could never be built. Number 8. Iquitos, Loreto region, Peru. Deep in the heart of the Peruvian Amazon, about 100 kilometers from where 3 rivers converge to form the Amazon River, there's a city of nearly 500,000 people, and no road leads to it. Not a highway, not a dirt path, nothing. Iquitos is the largest city on Earth that cannot be reached by road. The only way in or out is by boat, a trip that can take days along the river system, or by plane. The airport connects it to the outside world, but everything the city depends on, cars, appliances, building materials, fuel, arrives by barge, slowly making its way through the Amazon's vast network of waterways. This city wasn't always isolated by choice. In the late 1800s, during the global rubber boom, Iquitos became a center of sudden wealth. Rubber barons built grand European-style homes and imported luxury materials from across the world, tiles from Portugal, marble from Italy, all transported thousands of miles upriver. But when synthetic rubber collapsed the market in the early 20th century, the money disappeared. The infrastructure remained, and so did the people. Today, Iquitos is the capital of the Loreto region, an area rich in natural resources but still facing major development challenges. Access to healthcare is limited, and supply chains are fragile. During the dry season, when river levels drop, transport slows or stops entirely, leading to shortages of essential goods. And the environment surrounding the city is anything but forgiving. The Amazon rainforest is one of the most biodiverse ecosystems on Earth, which also makes it one of the most dangerous. Jaguars, anacondas, and poison dart frogs live just beyond the edges of the city. Bullet ants, known for one of the most painful stings in the animal kingdom, are common. Mosquitoes carrying diseases like malaria and dengue are a constant threat. Even the river itself is filled with hazards: piranhas, electric eels, and the candiru, a parasitic fish feared by locals more than any predator. Nearly 500,000 people live here, in a place that the modern world still can't reach by land. The jungle presses in on all sides, ready to reclaim everything if maintenance ever stops. Every road, every building, every system exists because someone brought it here by water. And yet, the city thrives. There are traffic jams, there's nightlife, there's food delivery, a fully functioning urban center, operating against the limits of geography, connected to the rest of the world by nothing but river and sky. Number 7. Mawsynram, Meghalaya, India. In the far northeastern corner of India, in a state whose name literally means, the abode of clouds, there's a village that holds a record unlike any other. Mawsynram is the wettest inhabited place on Earth. On average, it receives more than 11,700 millimeters of rain every year. That's nearly 38 feet. To put that into perspective, a city like London gets around 600 millimeters annually. Mawsynram sees almost 20 times that amount. And the rain doesn't come gently or evenly. During the monsoon season, from June to September, rainfall can exceed 2,300 millimeters in a single month. There are days when the downpour is so relentless that visibility drops to just a few feet, and even simple conversations require shouting over the noise. This extreme weather is the result of geography working at full force. Moist air from the Bay of Bengal is pushed inland and forced upward by the Khasi Hills, a sudden, steep rise in elevation that squeezes every bit of moisture out of the air. Mawsynram sits right at the point where this effect is strongest. The impact of that much rain is constant and unavoidable. Soil erodes, roads wash out, metal structures corrode in months. Electrical systems fail under the moisture. Crops that can't survive saturated soil simply won't grow. Humidity lingers at levels so high that mold can form overnight, and drying clothes becomes a daily challenge most people lose. But what makes this place remarkable isn't just the rain, it's how people adapted to it. For generations, the Khasi people have developed a solution that doesn't fight nature, but works with it. They guide the roots of living rubber fig trees across rivers and ravines, slowly shaping them into natural bridges. These living root bridges take 15 to 20 years to become usable. Some have been standing for over 180 years. Unlike anything built from steel or concrete, these structures grow stronger over time. The more they are exposed to water, the more the roots expand, reinforcing the bridge instead of weakening it. Research has shown that these living structures can support loads comparable to modern footbridges, all without maintenance. In a place where rain destroys nearly everything humans try to build, the solution wasn't to resist it. It was to grow something that could survive it. Nearly 38 feet of rain every year, and while roads break apart and disappear, the bridges only get stronger. Number 6. Arica y Parinacota region, Chile. On the northern edge of Chile, wedged between the Pacific Ocean and the vast Atacama Desert, there's a coastal city of nearly 250,000 people living in one of the driest places on Earth. In some years, rainfall here isn't just low, it's non-existent. Zero. Not a single drop falls from the sky. Just beyond the city lies the Atacama Desert, the driest non-polar desert on the planet. There are areas within it where no rainfall has ever been recorded in human history. When NASA tested equipment there for future Mars missions, they found parts of the soil so dry and lifeless that they were considered more sterile than the surface of Mars itself. Long-term climate data shows that the city averages about 0.5 millimeters of rain per year. And between 1903 and 1918, it didn't receive any measurable rainfall at all, 15 straight years of absolute drought. So how does a city like this survive? Its water doesn't come from local rain. Instead, it's piped in from rivers fed by melting snow in the Andes Mountains, hundreds of kilometers away and thousands of meters higher in elevation. The entire system depends on snowfall in a place most residents will never see. If that snowpack disappears, the city has no alternative source. And that's becoming a real concern. Studies have shown that Andean snow levels have been steadily declining over the past few decades, putting long-term water security at risk for the entire region. Yet despite the complete absence of rain, the city still interacts with moisture in a different way. A dense coastal fog, known locally as the Camanchaca, regularly drifts in from the Pacific Ocean. It creates an unusual environment where the air feels damp, but the ground remains completely dry. To take advantage of this, researchers have installed fog-catching systems, large mesh nets designed to trap moisture from the air and channel it into storage tanks. A single system can collect up to 15 liters of water per day. Still, that's a small fraction of what a city this size needs. 250,000 people living in a place where the sky offers nothing. Their survival depends on distant mountain snow and fog rolling in from an ocean they can't drink. Every glass of water has traveled farther than most people do in a week. And yet, this city has endured for centuries. Long before modern infrastructure, the Chinchorro people settled here over 7,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest continuously inhabited regions in the Americas. 7,000 years in a place where rain is almost a myth. Number 5. Kalachi, Akmola region, Kazakhstan. In the open grasslands of central Kazakhstan, about 320 kilometers south of the capital, Astana, there's a small village of around 600 people where something happens that no one has been able to fully explain. Without warning, people fall asleep. Not tired, not drowsy, they collapse mid-sentence, mid-step, mid-meal, and don't wake up for days. Sometimes longer. The first known case appeared in 2013. A woman suddenly lost consciousness while walking through the village. She woke up 2 days later in a hospital, with no memory of what had happened. Soon after, more cases began to surface. Workers fell asleep on the job. Children passed out in classrooms. In some cases, entire families were found unconscious inside their homes at the same time. By 2015, more than 150 residents had experienced these episodes, many more than once. Some reported vivid hallucinations before losing consciousness. Others woke up disoriented, with memory loss, dizziness, and confusion. Children seemed to be especially vulnerable. Medical teams from Kazakhstan and Russia launched extensive investigations. They tested for infections, toxins, and neurological disorders, but found no consistent cause. No shared disease, no clear explanation. One of the leading theories emerged from a 2015 study conducted by Kazakhstan's National Nuclear Center. Researchers suggested that the episodes could be linked to elevated levels of carbon monoxide and hydrocarbons in the air, possibly leaking from a nearby abandoned uranium mine left over from the Soviet era. The mine had been shut down in the 1990s, but its tunnels were never properly sealed. The idea was that changes in atmospheric pressure might force trapped gases to rise from underground and drift into the village. But even that explanation isn't universally accepted. Some scientists argue that the measured gas levels are too low to cause such severe symptoms. Others point out that the timing of the incidents doesn't consistently match changes in air pressure. A follow-up study in 2016 found mixed results. Some patients showed signs consistent with carbon monoxide exposure, while others did not. The government eventually offered to relocate residents. Some agreed and left, others chose to stay. Today, a small population still remains in Kalachi. The mysterious sleep episodes have become less frequent, but they haven't completely disappeared. A village where people can lose consciousness at any moment, and no one can say exactly why. The most widely accepted explanation points to invisible gas leaking from a forgotten mine. But even that remains uncertain. The cause may be there, or it may not, and hundreds of people continue to live in a place where staying awake is never guaranteed. Number 4. Ile Amsterdam, French southern and Antarctic lands. In the middle of the southern Indian Ocean, more than 3,200 kilometers from the nearest inhabited land, there's a remote volcanic island that feels completely cut off from the rest of the world. Covering just 55 square kilometers, it sits thousands of kilometers from any continent, over 4,300 kilometers from Africa and more than 3,500 kilometers from Australia. At any given time, only 25 to 30 people live here. They're scientists and support staff stationed at the Martin de Vivis research base, operating under the French Southern and Antarctic Lands Administration. Their assignments last between 6 and 12 months, after which they rotate out. There's no airport, no deep water harbor, large ships can't dock here. Supplies arrive just a few times a year, transferred from vessels offshore using small boats navigating rough ocean swells that often rise above 3 meters. The island itself is the remains of an ancient shield volcano that last erupted around 200,000 years ago. The landscape is harsh, windswept grasslands, uneven terrain, and sparse vegetation shaped by constant exposure to the elements. This island lies within the Roaring Forties, one of the most turbulent wind zones on the planet. Strong westerly winds dominate the climate year-round. Average wind speeds regularly exceed 30 km per hour, and during storms, gusts can reach up to 150 km per hour. When conditions intensify, outdoor activity is often halted entirely, a situation that happens multiple times each month. Contact with the outside world is limited to satellite communication. In the event of a serious medical emergency, evacuation is anything but immediate. It could take days for a ship to arrive, or a military aircraft might be deployed from Réunion, more than 2,800 kilometers away. Either way, help is never quick. And everyone stationed here understands that before they arrive. This isolation isn't new. In the 19th century, settlers attempted to establish a cattle ranching community on the island. The effort failed after an out-of-control fire, originally set to clear land, devastated much of the native ecosystem. The environmental damage took over a century to partially recover. Today, the island remains one of the most isolated inhabited places on Earth. 30 people living on a remote outcrop in the middle of an ocean so vast that distance stops feeling measurable. Supplies arrive just 4 times a year. There's no runway, no reliable evacuation, and no quick way out. The wind is constant, the isolation is absolute, and everyone who goes there chooses it, fully aware that for months at a time, that island is their entire world. Number 3. Grise Fjord, Nunavut, Canada. At the southern edge of Ellesmere Island, about 1,200 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle, there's a small community of roughly 130 people living in one of the most extreme environments on Earth. It's the northernmost permanently inhabited settlement in Canada, and one of the northernmost anywhere in the world. From late October to mid-February, the sun never rises. Not once. For nearly 4 months, the entire community exists in total darkness. The only light comes from the moon, the stars, and the shifting glow of the aurora borealis. During this period, temperatures average around -35°C, and with wind chill, it can feel colder than -55°C. Conditions like this would be considered life-threatening in most parts of the world. But here, they're routine. And yet, the harsh climate isn't the most difficult part of this place's history. In 1953, several Inuit families were relocated here by the Canadian government from northern Quebec, over 2,000 kilometers to the south. They were told the area would offer strong hunting opportunities and that they could return home if they chose to. Neither promise was fulfilled. When they arrived, they found a landscape far more unforgiving than anything they had known. Game was scarce, winters were longer and darker, the cold was more severe, and when they asked to go back, they were denied. Years later, investigations revealed that the relocation was part of a broader strategy to establish Canadian presence and sovereignty in the high Arctic. The human cost of that decision would take decades to fully acknowledge. In 2010, the Canadian government formally apologized, 57 years after the relocation. Compensation was offered, but many felt it didn't fully reflect the hardship endured. Today, the community continues to survive through a mix of traditional hunting and modern supply systems. Polar bears, caribou, musk oxen, and Arctic char remain essential food sources. Store-bought goods are flown in by cargo plane, making everyday items extremely expensive. A single watermelon can cost over $30. A case of bottled water can reach $70 or more. 130 people living in months of total darkness, in temperatures that would be considered an emergency anywhere else, on land they didn't choose. At first, they stayed because they had no option. Then they stayed because they adapted. And now, generations later, they stay because they've built a life there. A place shaped by cold, isolation, and history, transformed into home not by chance, but by resilience. Number 2, Agbogbloshie, Greater Accra Region, Ghana. Along the edge of the Corley Lagoon in Accra, Ghana's capital, there's a massive scrapyard where the modern world's discarded electronics end up. Every year, an estimated 263,000 tons of e-waste, old computers, TVs, refrigerators, phones, and cables, arrive here in shipping containers from North America, Europe, and Asia. The waste is spread across an area about the size of 11 football fields. Around 10,000 people work here, many of them teenagers and even younger. Their goal is simple: recover anything of value. Copper, aluminum, and other metals hidden inside the waste. The method is as direct as it is dangerous. Wires are burned to strip away plastic and expose copper. Circuit boards are heated over open flames to separate components. Fires burn constantly, sending thick black smoke into the air. Smoke filled with toxic substances like lead, mercury, cadmium, dioxins, and furans. According to the World Health Organization, these are some of the most hazardous compounds known to science. Studies have revealed just how severe the contamination is. Soil samples from the site have shown lead levels up to 100 times higher than safe standards set by environmental agencies in the United States. Workers, many without any protective gear, often have elevated levels of heavy metals in their blood. Among children, signs of long-term neurological damage have been documented. Much of this waste isn't supposed to be here. Investigations by organizations like the Basel Action Network and Greenpeace have found that large portions of the e-waste are exported illegally from developed countries, despite international agreements meant to prevent this exact situation. Many shipments are labeled as reusable goods, but a significant amount arrives broken beyond repair, destined only to be dismantled or burned. For the people working here, the risk is constant. They spend 8 to 12 hours a day inhaling toxic fumes, often earning just $2 to $10 daily. Within months, many develop respiratory issues, chronic headaches, and skin conditions. Long-term workers report ongoing breathing problems, vision issues, and persistent illness. Nearby, the Corley Lagoon tells the same story. Once a functioning waterway, it's now one of the most polluted bodies of water on Earth, filled with ash, plastic debris, and heavy metals. The water has turned black. Nothing survives in it, 10,000 people, many of them children, working in toxic conditions, burning the world's discarded technology for a few dollars a day. They understand the danger, but for many, it's still better than the alternative. The wealthiest nations produce the waste, the poorest communities process it, and the people standing in the smoke are the ones with the fewest options to walk away. Number 1. Yakutsk, Sakha Republic, Russia. And now, we move to a place where the scale changes completely. Not a remote village, not an isolated island, not a small, forgotten settlement, but an entire city, home to more than 300,000 people, built on ground that is slowly disappearing beneath it. In the heart of Siberia, roughly 450 kilometers south of the Arctic Circle, lies Yakutsk, the largest city in the world built entirely on permafrost. Beneath the surface, the ground remains frozen year-round, extending hundreds of meters deep. Or at least, it used to. Every building, every road, every pipe, every piece of infrastructure in this city depends on one single assumption: that the ground beneath it will stay frozen forever. And that assumption is starting to fail. Winters in Yakutsk are among the harshest experienced by any major city on Earth. Temperatures regularly drop below -40 degrees Celsius. In January, the average sits around -38 degrees Celsius. At this level of cold, physics itself begins to feel different. Throw boiling water into the air, and it freezes instantly before it touches the ground. Car batteries die within minutes. Rubber tires crack. Metal becomes so brittle it can shatter under stress. Even the air behaves differently. Exhaust from cars, heating systems, and factories doesn't rise, it sinks. It settles over the city like a heavy blanket, forming a dense fog of ice crystals mixed with pollution that can linger for weeks or even months. But what makes Yakutsk truly extreme isn't just the cold. It's the contrast, because in summer, temperatures can climb as high as 38 degrees Celsius. That's a swing of more than 85 degrees over the course of a single year. One of the most dramatic temperature ranges anywhere on the planet. To survive in this environment, the city had to be engineered in ways that almost nowhere else requires. Buildings are not constructed directly on the ground. Instead, they are raised on concrete stilts driven deep into the permafrost. This design keeps heat from the buildings from melting the frozen soil beneath them. Pipes for water and heating aren't buried underground. They run above the surface, wrapped in thick insulation, stretching across the city like elevated veins. Because if they were buried, the surrounding ice would shift, crack, and destroy them within a single season. Everything in Yakutsk is designed around one rule: keep the ground frozen. But that rule is becoming harder to follow. Over the past 50 years, ground temperatures across the region have risen by as much as 2.5 degrees Celsius. That might not sound like much, but in a system built entirely on frozen stability, it changes everything. The active layer, the top layer of soil that thaws each summer, has been growing deeper year by year. In some areas, it has expanded by more than 30 centimeters in just 2 decades. That means the ground is no longer as solid as it once was. And the effects are already visible. Buildings that stood firm for decades are beginning to shift. Foundations crack, walls split, floors tilt at strange angles. Doors no longer close properly. Roads buckle and warp as the soil beneath them softens and moves unevenly. Across Russia's permafrost regions, studies estimate that up to 40% of buildings have already experienced structural damage linked directly to thawing ground. And Yakutsk is at the center of it. But this isn't just a local problem. Because what's happening beneath this city has global consequences. Permafrost isn't just frozen dirt. It's one of the largest carbon storage systems on Earth. Locked inside it are an estimated 1.5 trillion tons of organic carbon, roughly twice the amount currently in the atmosphere. As the ground thaws, that organic material begins to decompose. And when it does, it releases greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and methane, into the atmosphere. That creates a dangerous feedback loop. Warming causes permafrost to melt. Melting releases greenhouse gases. Those gases cause more warming, which leads to more melting. And the cycle continues. Climate scientists have described this as a tipping point, one that may not have a clear way to reverse. Beneath Yakutsk, researchers are studying this process in real time. The Melnikov Permafrost Institute operates a tunnel that extends over 100 meters into the frozen ground beneath the city. Inside, temperatures remain constant at around -7 degrees Celsius. The walls are lined with ancient ice, layers that have remained frozen for thousands of years. Scientists analyze these layers like pages in a history book, reading past climate conditions preserved in frozen time. But above that tunnel, outside the controlled environment, the reality is changing. Even the ground beneath the institute itself is beginning to shift. This is what makes Yakutsk different from every other place on this list. It's not just extreme, it's unstable. This is a fully functioning city, with traffic, schools, businesses, and daily life, built on a foundation that is no longer guaranteed. The engineers who designed this place believed the permafrost would remain permanent. The climate had other plans. And yet, life continues. People still go to work. Children still go to school. The city still grows. But every year, the changes become harder to ignore. Each summer, the thaw goes a little deeper. Each winter, the ground refreezes a little less completely. Each year, more buildings show signs of stress. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the stability that once defined this city is slipping away. Yakutsk still stands, but it stands on a question. How long can a city survive when the ground beneath it is no longer permanent? Because right now, 300,000 people wake up every day in a place where the foundation of their entire world is changing. Centimeter by centimeter, and there is no easy way to stop it.